I'm Pat Dooris. Welcome to The Story. My oh my, do we have a great show for you tonight. We're going to talk at length about driving in Oregon and the agency that builds our roads and bridges. They kind of need a lot more money than they have. And you may have heard that tolling is dead. Well, hold on. It's not as dead as you might think. And there's more. That's why it's all our big story tonight. The director of Oregon's Department of Transportation has a money problem. His agency has billions of dollars in loans, and its revenues, that means the taxes and fees that we pay them, are not going up as fast as they would like, which is one reason they forged ahead with the big regional tolling idea for Interstate 5 and Interstate 205 in the greater Portland area. That was supposed to bring in much needed dollars, but the project fell apart when the governor pulled the plug on March 12th. After that happened, I had a chance to sit down with ODOT's director, Kris Strickler, to talk about tolling and where the state will look next for money. And by the way, remember that he serves at the pleasure of the governor, so don't expect him to criticize her. One of my first questions was about the governor's order to end that regional tolling program.
Well, honestly, I applaud the governor's leadership. As you look to what we've been trying to stand up for years on this program, it's been tough. And you look around and you're trying to serve many things at the same time. You're trying to accommodate the needs of the system by managing congestion, reducing greenhouse gases, while also recognizing that there's some finance aspect associated with it, all at a time when really the way to manage that would potentially cost high tolls. And so those kinds of balancing things, I think, became really difficult. And frankly, you look at what we have to spend over the next year in order to stand up a back office, in order to stand up a marketing effort, in order to stand up roadside inventory, all of those things. I think it was the right time to make the call.
Was the plan asking too much of tolling, reducing congestion and raising money at the same time?
I think in some ways. I think it's also when tolling became part of the equation back in 2017 and the dialogue really started around value pricing, I think there was a lot of effort built into what it could be, right? And as we look to what it actually means in application, we had impacts to local jurisdictions and to the public and to the system itself. And those impacts, when trying to balance how to mitigate them, along with what you need in order to keep the system running, really became too much to bear for one single program, at least the way it was being set up.
All right, so he's telling us several things here. First, he worried the tolls were going to be too high, too expensive. And second, the looming costs of setting up all of that infrastructure, which would have been about $100 million. Well, that's what made the governor pull the plug when she did. The agency was about to enter into contracts to spend that money. Also, the plan sounded good on paper 6 years ago, but a lot of people, so many of you, were a lot more angry than they expected. But while tolling may be down, oh, it is certainly not out. The governor, while she canceled the program, has in the past said that she thinks that tolling does need to be a part of ODOT's funding. So was it, you think, just this program, or is she taking tolling off the board?
I didn't see anything taking tolling off the board, and I think the governor is very well aware of all of the things that we have as far as needs in the system and then potential remedies that might be out there for it. So you don't have to look any further than the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. That finance plan still requires tolling, and so that will continue, and so that's not off the table at all.
Along those lines, sorry to interrupt, but
sure.
So then a lot of people are wondering, well, gosh, won't you have a lot of people bailing over to 205? So will there be tolls over there?
At this point, no, but we really rely on the traffic modeling and the modeling effort from the Interstate Bridge Replacement team to see what the potential impacts are going to be, and they're still working on those.
Okay, so possible.
Possible for tolls or possible impacts?
Possible for tolls.
I would say at this point, it's not what we're looking at. We're not looking at tolling the I-205 bridge. We are really focused on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. There might be impacts, and the team will look at how to mitigate those.
So that'll be interesting. Are you following that? If I-5 and the I-5 bridge right there is tolled and 205 just a little bit to the east is not, I think more than a few of us are going to divert to 205 and skip the toll. And just so you know, ODOT is not being shy about its future plans. This is a presentation from last June that ODOT gave. Look to the left. It shows where the agency currently gets its funding: fuel taxes, weight miles, that's a tax on big trucks, and the DMV, where we all pay for our registration. To the right is where they want to be in the future. It includes everything that we have now, plus tolling there on the bottom, and RUC, which is road user charge. That's a tax on you and me for every mile we drive. Interesting. Okay, let's get back to talking about tolling. And then as far as other potential toll programs, different than this one, I've heard people talk about, well, you could put tolling just north of Woodburn, for example, and catch everybody going between Portland and Salem. Is that a possibility?
Honestly, almost any of these different variations and permutations are a possibility, but they're a possibility that has to come with direction associated with it. As we look to what has been, I think, the most difficult part is local jurisdictions are struggling to see how it can benefit them overall. I think we've got even state legislators that have been really focused on diving into the details. I think we even called them deep dive presentations when Brendan Finn and his team went in front of them. And
for a lot of them, they said it's not going to benefit, it's going to be a nightmare.
Right, and so as you look to just their opinions and the things that they're bringing forward and the concerns that they're raising, that's, you know, there's a constituent base there that is really concerned. And I think really balancing all of those things isn't really about the permutations of can you move it a couple of hundred yards. It's really about what is the overall context of the toll system and what's it trying to achieve.
Okay, here's what that means. In the future, ODOT will try much harder to let tolling be a result of grassroots push coming up from drivers who are fed up with congestion instead of an edict handed down from the state. And yes, I know he basically did not answer the question about where tolling could go with future plans, but it would be a bad bet, in my opinion, to bet that tolling our highways around the Portland area is dead. There's an urgency to the agency to bring in more money because the agency has lots of debt, which should concern you. This is, after all, the agency that maintains our bridges and highways all around the state of Oregon. We don't want them running low on money. And we taxpayers, of course, backstop the agency if they run low. Okay, interesting. So then just kind of broad finances. Yeah. It's my understanding that back in 2000, the year 2000, ODOT was kind of almost debt-free. And then since then, it's been project after project after project that the legislature has told you to do. And you guys have had to go out for bonding on that. And now you have a pretty sizable debt, I think like around $4 billion perhaps?
I don't want to quote the exact number, but we have a debt service program that is a significant percentage of our outgoing. I would say, just by comparison, we're as indebted as many states across the country. Transportation is struggling nationwide as you start to think about sustainable funding mechanisms going forward. But I can also happily report that we're not as indebted as some of our just most neighboring states.
Okay, honey, there's not much money in the checkbook, but at least the neighbors are in worse shape. ODOT's outstanding debt is $4.3 billion, as you saw on the table there. Now, it is a big agency, so the number's not quite as big as that might sound, but paying that off does impact the operations. Every 2 years, the agency is paying $553 million. That's $276 million per year on that debt. So that means less money to spend on other things. Okay, so there's that. Right. But are you comfortable with the amount of debt that we have now?
I am comfortable with the amount of debt we have now, but I will say very directly that transportation funding is struggling right now. We're in a space where whether we call it flat or not rising at the pace that we need in the revenue space, we know that in the future that we're going to see declining revenues, and whether or not that's here today or in the future is in some ways not the point. The point is actually the inflationary impact, the escalation. The dollar is not buying what it used to buy, and it's impacting our ability to provide service. So whether we have debt service associated with the advancement of projects, and I will say I think that that's a wise choice, and I understand why the legislature did it. That doesn't change the fact that we have operational needs, and those operational needs really need to be addressed in the near term.
Is there a number that you start to get uncomfortable at as far as borrowing?
I haven't seen it yet, but we're also not proposing additional borrowing to get there, so maybe that's the way I would answer that.
In other words, he's pretty close to the limit. He does not want to borrow more, which brings us to the billion-dollar question: where will that money come from? Now, going forward, if you don't have tolling, what do you have?
Well, candidly, we need to talk about the structural funding of the agency. So So I've been really pleased with our conversations with the Joint Committee on Transportation, and they've been, I think, really receptive to the fact that we need to look at other options or a suite of options, right? In some ways, we need to diversify the funding portfolio for transportation. I clearly can't speak for them. They have a tough decision in front of them. My job is to create options for them. But certainly
that's an excellent deflection,
sir. They have to choose it.
But you are the director and the expert. You know more about this than probably anybody in this state. As you're looking out, if you had a magic wand, what would be the funding sources that would get us through the future in good shape?
Yeah, I think the strongest funding sources that are the most equitable and have the ability to sustain across the board for the transportation system will be a suite of things. It will be likely we'll be talking about a road usage charge.
Say that again, because I don't think people heard that.
Road usage charge.
Road user charge.
Yep, that's right.
That means you're going to tax me for every mile I drive?
It means there's a fee associated with every mile you drive. That's right.
Okay, I think that's the same thing, sir.
And when we look at gas tax as a potential option still in the equation, as we look at other options that frankly we haven't brought forward but that could be out there for the legislative body because they have that tough decision in front of them, it is 3 or 4 or more things as you look at fees associated with the system. I'll also throw in DMV fees. DMV fees have to be part of the equation as you look at the whole suite because you can't rely on a single source to be the foundation of everything because that's how you get into the situation we're in now.
So by that you mean currently it's the gas tax basically, right?
Yeah, predominantly.
So it's a one-legged stool kind of thing.
Right. I mean, we do have DMV fees and we have motor carrier fees, so I don't want to leave out the fact that we have our heavy users of the system that are also paying a significant amount. In fact, right now probably paying a little more. It's that we have to balance those things along with what we see the future becoming. And the future is, more fuel efficient vehicles. The future is EV. The future is other funding sources. So you can't stay on gas tax being your source. But I actually think the most important element of all of this is whatever fee source is chosen as a potential solution, we have to look at ways to index it. Because if we don't index it, keep pace with inflation, for lack of a better description, then from the day we pass something and the day we move forward, it starts to decline in its buying power right then.
So for example, the gas tax, which has gone up, I think, 2 cents a year.
That's right.
But it's not indexed to inflation at all.
That's correct. There's about 17 to 19 states in the country right now that index in some way. They either index to inflation or they index to fuel economy. And we don't do that yet. And so that's one of the things that I think is really important when you look at the foundational must-haves in a transportation system.
And I saw somebody suggest an idea of a transportation sales tax or a tax on goods and services. What do you think about something like that?
I think that's a tough one to take before the legislature, and it's not one that we've suggested.
Yeah, all right. But will tolling be in the future funding mix, you think?
I think as we look to tolling as a source of funding, it certainly has to be on the table, just like it is on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. That said, I don't think that time is right now, as you're seeing. And so as we think about what that future looks like, I think it really depends on how you pull together that suite of options. But tolling certainly is an important tool for us. And it's an important tool for 300 facilities across the country. So it's not new. It is value-based, but it's also difficult.
Okay, so that was a deep dive with the director of Oregon's Department of Transportation. Thank you to Kris Strickler for taking the time to talk with us. Let's recap what we've learned. Tolling is down, but it is definitely not out. The regional tolling plan collapsed because they wanted it to do too much, lower congestion and make money for ODOT without the tolls being too high. That was impossible. ODOT is getting tight on money and does not want to borrow more. The future likely includes an increase in the gas tax, maybe forever linked to inflation, so always going up like that, and a road user charge where you and I will pay for every mile we drive. That is definitely in our future, and wait for it, yeah, probably tolling as well. So, what do you think of any or all of this? You know the drill. Email us your thoughts. The email is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, will you? The number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. And tomorrow night, by the way, we'll hear from the leader of the Urban Mobility Office, which is still working on widening the Rose Quarter area of I-5. We'll also talk about the possibility of tolling on the west side for Highways 26 and 217. Yes, you did hear that right. The word toll and Highways 26 and 217 in the same sentence. That's coming up tomorrow night at 6:30. Up next now on The Story, there's a big shakeup going on in Governor Tina Kotek's office, and it appears to center on a decision to bring in her wife in a support role. 3 top staffers are leaving, and it has many thinking back to the not-so-distant past of another Oregon governor roiled in scandal involving a loved one. What we know so far this time around when The Story returns. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek has had a pretty strong first year plus in office. She's pretty much gotten what she wanted from the legislature, and we here on The Story have said she's probably one of the most effective governors that we've seen in quite a while. She's done great, and it's been quiet in her office until now. This comes as 3 of Tina Kotek's top staffers are suddenly stepping down. Working alongside your spouse in politics, what could possibly go wrong? That's apparently where this is all coming from. Blair Best has our story.
Governor Tina Kotek's administration is not providing much detail so far about the new position for Oregon's First Lady. But we know they've brought in a staffer to work with the First Lady for the next 6 months as they work to give her her own office. The big questions that still remain: what will the First Lady be using it for, and how will it shape her role in the administration? This week, a new advisor is joining Governor Tina Kotek's office, all to help the First Lady, Amy Kotek Wilson, establish her own office. Although so far, it's unclear exactly what Kotek Wilson will be doing. The governor's spokeswoman tells KGW she will support the administration. Now, we asked what that meant, but we're not given any specifics, though it's confirmed Kotek Wilson won't be getting paid. In the past, bringing family members into the work of running the state has proven controversial.
Well, my first thoughts went back to history.
Jim Moore teaches politics at Pacific University.
This has been an issue for first ladies for over 50 years. What help do they get in being first lady?
Back in 2015, Governor John Kitzhaber resigned amid scandal over the role his fiancée played in his administration. Governor Tina Kotek, then House Speaker, among those who called for his resignation.
So it's been a big issue for a while. But this then also raises other questions. What is the First Lady going to be doing? This First Lady is different than other First Ladies.
For one, she joined the governor on the recent One Oregon Listening Tour. She has a background in social work, helping those with serious mental illness. Here she is next to Kotek in Yamhill County back in December.
I don't know how active she was in those conversations, but she was at every one. We haven't seen anything like that before.
The talks of giving her an office comes amid 3 of the governor's top staff stepping down, including her chief of staff leaving this week.
It shows that they are at a place where they can't be comfortable working with the governor for whatever reason. I think it probably has to do with the First Lady, but for whatever reason.
The Willamette Week and OPB both reporting tensions between those staffers and the First Lady led to their departure. KGW reached out to each of them but did not hear back, and the governor's office would not comment on what they're calling personal matters.
That is an issue for the governor. It shows that when she chose these people for the position, she may not have thought through what she wanted to do as governor. And that's a common thing.
Neither the governor nor the First Lady were available for an interview today. The governor's chief of staff is leaving on Friday, so the deputy chief of staff for public administration will step in, seeing as the governor's deputy chief of staff is also leaving next week, and so is one of the governor's special advisors, who is returning to work at OHSU. Blair Best, KGW News.
Tonight's Digging for Old was inspired by our last story regarding Oregon's First Lady and the drama unfolding in the governor's office. We went to the Oregon Historical Society's online collection and searched for First Lady. It brought up 20 listings for us, and this political ribbon caught our attention from July 4th, 1923. Here's a closer look now. It's a reception pin with the name of the 29th President of the United States on the front, Warren G. Harding. The ribbon came up in our search because the description mentioned Harding's First Lady, Florence, who traveled with him to Oregon in the summer of 1923, 101 years ago. And luckily, the Historical Society has many photos of Harding's visit, which started in Meacham, Oregon on July 3rd. Meacham is out in Umatilla County for those of you who are not familiar, and I think there's a good number of you out there who watch us, so hello. The President and First Lady were met there with a big reception that included Oregon's governor at the time, Walter Pierce. The Hardings met with representatives from the Cayuse, Walla Walla, and Umatilla tribes, and they talked with the President about their mistreatment by the U.S. government. After those discussions, the Hardings were actually formally adopted into the Cayuse tribe. The presidential party then came west to Portland for Independence Day. The reception committee greeted the Hardings at the Multnomah Hotel, which included members of Portland's high society and is where the ribbon came from that we showed you earlier. Thousands showed up to see the president, but that's where this story takes a bit of a dark turn. For most, if not all the people in the crowd, it would be the very last time they would see Harding alive. Less than a month later, on August 2nd, 1923, while on the same West Coast tour that brought him to Portland, Harding died suddenly in San Francisco at the age of 57, likely from either a heart attack or a stroke. And just hours later, on the other side of the country in his home state of Vermont, Vice President Calvin Coolidge heard the news and became the nation's 30th president. How about that? Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends, you guys. It just keeps going on and on. Thanks for all your emails and your phone calls. We read them all. We listen to them all. And we're going to include more of them in our show. Straight Talk with Laurel Porter is coming your way next. Instead of airing Friday nights, you can now catch Laurel over the weekend and on Monday nights. In the meantime, I hope you join me right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.